Welcome to the first People and Culture Managers Forum. We'll go ahead and get started right now. Welcome to the folks of you who are online. I'm here primarily to introduce James Dudek, who will be doing most of the talking to walk us through the engagement survey. But before we get into that, I wanted to see if there are any BSA members here in the audience, because the survey is put together by Willis Towers Watson and also UCOP in conjunction with CUCSA, who through our BSA gets our input. Is anybody here? I thought I saw Brian earlier.
Yeah,
Thank you. And so for those of you who have complaints about the survey, you should direct them to Brian.
Yes. My fault. I am the CUCSA rep, so it is my fault.
Indirectly it is. So we want this to be an interactive kind of presentation, so James is going to be sort of leading the conversation. I'm going to provide some commentary, but really it's to give you the opportunity to ask questions and provide input as we go through. So if you have something that you want to say, you don't have to save it until the end. Raise your hand. We have a couple people with microphones, and because we do have an online audience, please wait for the microphone to get to you so that everybody can hear your question. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started.
Great. Thank you, Eugene. Some background about the engagement survey, an overview and some context, because I know we've all seen lots of surveys in the last year, so I want to be very clear about what we're talking about. Today we're talking about two surveys in particular. One is the UCOP Towers Watson CUCSA survey. Just rolls right off the tongue, right? And so what this is, as Eugene mentioned, and as Brian can attest to, this is a survey that's done by UCOP that's deployed to all 10 campuses at the same time. It's a collaboration between UCOP and CUCSA, which is the Council of UC Staff Assemblies. It happens every 2 years, and the last iteration of it was in May of this year. It's only sent out to represented staff and a random sampling of staff, about 60%. And this year we got about 923 responses out of 2,600 staff were invited. It's about a 36% response rate.
And so as background, so I did inquire about why the survey is not extended to represented staff, because a lot of us work side by side with represented staff and what they think matters too. And the response I got was less than clear about it being more complicated if we were to administer the survey to every employee, or why isn't it administered to faculty? But I think it's something that I'm going to continue to ask the question about, because, you know, I represent staff and the non-represented staff are my charge, but in order to make this campus good for everybody, we should have a better understanding of how everybody feels. We do a survey through E&I, the My Voice survey, which provides a lot of valuable information, but it just seems to me that we should be asking the same sets of questions to everybody if we believe that the responses matter, and we do believe that they matter.
And along with that, one of the ways we sort of check in with the UC Towers Watson survey is by having our own 7-question pulse survey. So you probably got that in October. Actually, I know you definitely got that in October, because we mailed that under Eugene's name to every single staff member on campus. So that's a survey that's a subset of the questions that the Towers Watson survey asks. We're doing it every 6 months. It's 7 questions that are localized and focused on the UC Berkeley staff engagement sort of questions that we want to make asking people of Berkeley. And we invite, again, all staff, and as of October, our response rate was 2,200 of approximately 8,500 staff, so a really, really good response rate on that.
How many people here responded to the survey? Every hand should go up, right? So thank you for responding, but please encourage your teams to also respond, because as you'll see as we talk about this, the programs that we design are based on the information that's provided to us from our pulse survey, from the engagement survey, and from other sources of information. But these are really the best ways we have to get a feeling for what everybody in general feels like we need to be focused on. So if people don't respond, we're missing out on the information, and they're missing an opportunity to contribute to the direction of the campus.
So I know you can't all read this up close, but a couple of things. If you go to hr.berkeley.edu right now, you'll see the slide deck with all the results. It was mailed several weeks ago under Eugene's name again. This is completely open and transparent to the world. Also, as a follow-up to this presentation, for those of you online and in here in the room, there'll be a follow-on message from Eugene with a survey, but also with a link to this specific slide deck. So I know you can't see these very, very closely, but this is just an overview of the various categories of the engagement questions, and we're going to be drilling down to each individual category over the next hour, and we're going to repeat those questions by different lenses of tenure, of ethnicity, of gender. And so you're going to have a lot of other times to see these questions in the next hour. So don't be too concerned about not being able to see things now. What I wanted you to see as an overall trend is you can see there are 3 bars here left to the right. So if you look at this one bar on the left of career development, for example, you can see the left bar is 51, the middle bar, which is blue, is 56, and the gold bar is 60. 51, that was our score for engagement in 2017. 56, that was our score this year, so we're up. So if you look at the left and the middle bar all across the line, by and large, we're up across every single indicator as a campus. This is an enormous amount of work and that we should be very, very proud of. Why aren't I mentioning that 60%, that last final bar? That's the UC average. So the story here is that we've made an incredible amount of progress over the last 2 years. But there's a lot of work to do. So if you look at that final gold bar, that's what the average is from the CUCSA surveys from all 10 campuses, right? So I like to say about assessment and doing action planning with assessment is childishly simple and devilishly difficult. Because the way to do assessment and to make an action planning against assessment is I ask you how you're feeling. You tell me how you're feeling. You tell me like 4 or 5 things I need to do. I go away, I do those 4 or 5 things, and then a while later I ask you how you're feeling again. You're like, I'm actually better now. That's actually what survey and assessment is all about. So I wanted you to all know, and we wanted to share with you the story of like we didn't get to go up across all these indicators just by sheer luck. This is an enormous amount of work. And work not only from our people and culture folks and learning and development and people and organizational development within what was Central HR, which is now people and culture, but also work on this campus and also work from managers and supervisors who are in this room, who engaged your staff and brought your staff to staff appreciation events and acknowledged them. So this is the team effort, and the team is not just one office. But we all together made these things happen. I wanted to sort of show you some of the things. I'm not going to read this laundry list of 40 things that we've done, but this is just an indicator of some of the things that we've done since 2017 that made those scores rise. One of them is the formation of the pod team. We revamped our website. We funded and supporting LinkedIn Learning, created a transferable skills library, revamped the Wisdom Cafe, team-based career development programs. We delivered customized programming to individual units, which allow our consultants to do. And it's expanded and enhanced the Now conference for staff. That's just in the career development piece. In engagement and employee experience, establishing the role of employee engagement and experience lead. That's me. Thank you, guys. That's awesome. We expanded Staff Appreciation Week, as I had mentioned, consulted with campus leadership and individual units in areas of staff engagement. And one of the things I would be remiss if I walked away is saying, at the end of the slide deck, you're going to see my contact information. You already have our information because we've been contacting you a lot. But this shouldn't be the last conversation we have. If you want to talk about how do you localize these engagement results and how do you do action planning for your own unit, please feel free to reach out for us, because that's what our role here is. We're also mentioning here we created the pulse surveys, built an onboarding toolkit for staff that helps bring people into the organization, and establish the role of an informal and social learning lead. When we look at communication and organizational change, we were more authentic leadership communications, more engagement survey roadshows and action planning sessions, kind of like this is right now, collaborations more with UCOP, establishment of the business process management group with the VC administration. In performance management, we designed and piloted Achieve together. I'm sure you've heard of that by now, I hope.
Has everybody here heard of that?
Yeah.
Good. Then launched the Growing as a Coach program. Also, I hope you've heard of that too. For diversity and inclusion, I want to pull out a couple initiatives that we've launched and expanded over the last 2 years. One is the Leadership and Career Enhancement Program for Staff of Color, or LCEP. We have Annette Tischler with us here today. Also the creation and expansion of the Faculty Leadership Academy under direction of Angela Stopper and our folks in the EVCP's office. Also collaboration with the UC Berkeley Women's Initiative and expanding that for our campus, as well as other collaborations with our staff wellness and the Tang Center and our collaborations there and across UCOP. In supervision, we completely reimagined the KEYS program as the Berkeley People Management Program. I see Kathy Medanza in the back there waving to everyone. Our Management Skills Assessment Program, we brought that back to campus for participation for more staff. And we've also created supervisor mastermind groups in addition to creating the LDU website with more just-in-time tools for staff and managers and supervisors.
So out of curiosity, how many folks here have participated in some aspect of the Berkeley People Management Program, whether it's the UC Online thing or something in Classroom? Okay, so every hand should go up in the room. And one of the things I would like to drive us towards as an organization is having all of our managers trained in actually how to manage and coach and lead. So we have resources that are available that are online that people can do passively, and I would encourage managers to require managers who report to them to have them to do this as part of a professional development thing. But we know as an organization that we need to do more to support managers, but part of also what needs to happen is that we all need to take the time to do that training. I did the training, so I'm not sitting here recommending something that I wouldn't do myself. I did it. I found it to be fantastic. And even though I would think that, I know a lot about how to manage and lead, I learned quite a bit for this program. So I would encourage you, those of you who haven't looked at it, to do it, and those of you who have started but not finished it, to actually make time to finish it and make it part of your professional development goals.
So now we're going to dig into some of these questions. So what you see here before you is the engagement survey results from the UCOP survey, and also our pulse survey results that we're sending out every 6 months. So on this screen, we see the blue bars, and the following slides are going to be that UCOP survey with the general question that's deployed to all UC staff that they select. And this career development question, for example, for the UCOP question is, I am confident I can achieve my personal career objectives within the UC system. Okay, so that's the question that UCOP asks all the staff they survey. We localized that, and that's the gold bars that you can see here. We changed that question to I can achieve my career objectives here at Berkeley. So you can see across the board when the UCOP question was asked, it was like 52 to 58% in the last 2 iterations. And you can see we're trending higher when we asked that question locally at Berkeley. On this next question of sustainable engagement, the question is, from the system, I would recommend use the UC system as a good place to work. You can see that's 63% last time, 71% this time. Those gold bars, again, are our pulse survey that we talked about, that we send out every 6 months. The question for us is, I would recommend UC Berkeley as a place to work. So in an earlier iteration, we weren't allowed to use the same language as Towers Watson. We've gotten permission now to use that language, so we're going to be changing those questions because going from I would recommend the UC system as a good place to work seems happier of a question than I would recommend UC Berkeley as a place to work. It kind of sounds like, well, of all the places I worked, Berkeley was one of them. So we want to make that, we want to actually recommend this as a good place to work. So that language change is coming in the coming months. So organizational change. Generally, recent major organizational change across the UC system has been explained well. We came in at a whopping 20% in 2017. How many people were working here in 2017? Okay, so you can remember like a lot of the stuff that was going on in 2017. We're up to 44%, woohoo! In 2019, so that's double. You can see what our pulse survey scores are with the 42, the 45, the 46. When we ask the question, I feel UC Berkeley is managing organizational change well, right? So these look like pretty damning numbers, and they are, but I want to let you know that some of the slide decks that we can't show everything to everyone at the same time and get through an hour and a half presentation or an hour presentation with the conversation. But one of the data points that's really important to contextualize these numbers is that when we looked at Willis Towers Watson's and this question that was 20% in 17, and we compared it to their sample size for the world, the response rate, the highest response rate was 50%. So we're up to 44%, but the world average is 50. So what this tells us, I think, as assessors and surveyors and just data people, is that the world we're not good at change management as a race, and we're certainly not good at adapting to change as humans. And so 20 is very, very low, 44 is higher, but again, the average mark is about 50. So we have more work to do here as we elsewhere, but again, you're not seeing other organizations that have 100% on this. Here's a performance management question. I feel my personal contributions are recognized. At Berkeley, we asked, my contributions are recognized by my supervisor. Again, we wanted to localize that, and we spent a lot of time focusing on how supervisors and managers can recognize, and those of you in the room who are supervisors, managers, and team leads can really sort of recognize your staff and your colleagues. And we wanted to ask that question so we could track it over time. Right?
So you should feel good about this result.
So these are good numbers. And again, as Eugene said, when we talked about this session, we wanted to sort of stray away from the stage on the stage, just talking at you for an hour. If you have a question about one of these slides, we can stop and pause, and we're going to go through other questions as well. So here's a working relationships question. There is good cooperation between my department and other departments at my campus. You can see this went from 60 to 66%. At Berkeley, we asked, my department collaborates and shares knowledge with others. We're a little bit higher than that average when we asked that question.
And the sort of the trick a little bit with that question is that people are probably less inclined to say that their own department is not collaborative and willing to share. So I think that skews the responses in a positive way.
Yeah, and in fact, the reason why this fall 18 is completely blank, because this was our first iteration of the pulse survey, and we asked the question, I collaborate well with other departments, and our response was 99%, because who would say no to that? So we changed that question to be more general to talk about your department. Hi.
In regards to the pulse survey, which is our
microphone is coming.
So the microphone is, again, for the people online and not just amplified.
So in regards to the pulse survey, which is the data from our campus, can departments get that information?
So we don't have it at the department level. We have it at the response rate level here. So both with Towers Watson and the Pulse, we don't track who takes it and what the response rate is. So we don't have individual region or department results.
But this is a good question because it's something we've discussed internally about should we, so the Pulse survey really asks only the 7 questions that you see, and so we don't track who answers it, where they come from, demographics, department, anything. And so I've asked, I wonder if it would make sense for us once a year when we do it to add additional questions so we can figure out, is it department, demographics, are there other questions that would be useful so that then we can make more targeted use of the information. I see a lot of heads nodding. Anybody think that's a bad idea?
People might not feel it's anonymous.
That's right.
The issue of it being anonymous. So I've only been here for 5 months, so I don't have a good sense of if we tell you answer this, but it's still anonymous. Do people believe us, or are we Big Brother?
Big brother.
Big brother.
Mm-hmm. So another way around this that I've encouraged folks that I've been consulting with across the campus and campus leaders as well is to say, we have this data set of what the Berkeley results are. So feel free to take all these questions and just ask them of your unit, if your unit is the right size, and then you can have a point in time of like, this is what my unit says, this is what the results of Berkeley every 6 months are, and then here's the biannual CUCSA results. And so I'm happy to work with you and come in and talk about which of these questions, or there may be different questions entirely that you want to sort of mix and match for your own assessment for your own area. So here's a question of diversity and inclusion. Employees at my campus location are treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their position or background. On the CUCSA survey, that was 60 to 68. The question we asked at Berkeley was, I am treated with dignity and respect while at work. As you can see, those numbers are significantly higher.
Sorry, James?
Yes?
1 second.
Go ahead.
Those questions seem really different to me, though, right? Like the yellow one is about me versus the blue one is like I could recognize that my colleagues of certain identifications might not be treated with the same dignity and respect. So it makes sense to me that the blue is a lot less than the yellow.
Right, and we did, there's going to be a response here from our Director of Strategy and Operations, Tommy Howard, while the mic is getting to him. And we recognize that some of the questions we wanted to ask more locally and more specifically about Berkeley specifically. But Tommy, to your point?
Yeah, so in addition to that, what we found is when we ask about other people, what people think of other people's experiences, numbers trended lower in a couple of places. And whenever the questions asked about their personal experience, the numbers are higher. And so what I found interesting is in some cases, there are questions that ask about what you think the whole campus experience is and what your experience is in the CUCSA survey. And again, it's borne out that when we think everyone else is treated really poorly, but boy, I'm treated well. So we thought it was more important to speak to what you experience rather than perhaps remembering a particular employee or colleague of yours being mistreated 5 weeks ago, 5 years ago. Those things linger a long time for people. And so that's why we changed the question to be about personal experience.
Thank you.
This next question is, Towers Watson didn't ask this question in 17. So, I can be myself at this organization without worrying about how I will be accepted. And at Berkeley, we asked, I can show up at work as my authentic self. So now I'm going to run through a number of these questions that we tracked internally when we were sort of building out our action plan, our strategic plan of how do we react to these survey results in 17. And so now we're going to be looking at these a series of these questions through the lens of ethnicity, tenure, role. So by role, I mean supervisor, director, manager, individual contributor, and gender. So we're going to start with ethnicity. So the way to read this chart is on the bottom here. Can you see? Oh, you can see my arrow. Great. Is the overall Berkeley results. So the green is the 19, the blue is the 17. So again, we're up overall for almost all areas and all indicators. And then we break it down into the different areas. And by we, I mean Willis Towers Watson. So Willis Towers Watson chose the categories of white, Hispanic, black, and Asian. That's their determination. Eugene has given them feedback about that and some other questions and things as well. So these are the groups and the groupings that people self-selected in when they took the survey. So here you can see this is the response for the question, I am confident I can achieve my personal career objectives within the UC system. So we went up again from 52 to 58, and you can see the numbers there, and the ranges are somewhere around 58, but all improving over time from the last time.
And what I should say is, as I look at these, we want to see improvement year over year, of course, but I also want to see that, well, I don't like the fact that some groups experience Berkeley in different ways than others, right? Everybody should be at the top score. And so that's one of the goals, I think, for us as an institution when we think about what programs are we instituting. Are we making sure everybody has a very positive experience, or are some people experiencing it in a more negative way? What are we doing to address those groups who have a less favorable experience?
Our next question is, I feel my personal contributions are recognized. Again, if you look at the bottom here, that we went from 64 to 68, so that's good. It's going in the right direction. But some of the numbers are different for different populations. So the white group went from 67 to 71, the Hispanic group from 53 to 66, so that's an increase, but still a little bit below the campus average. And then the Asian group is level set, while the Black identified group is 56 to 61. Oh, did I hear something?
We have a question in the middle, the hardest place to get to with a microphone.
So how do we know the number of people that took the survey in those 2 years? So is it the same? Could we have had more Hispanics in 2019 that took the survey than in 2017, and not just the number that answered that question that way?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we don't, because it's randomly selected by Towers Watson through UCOP, we don't know if the same people got the same survey 2 years in a row. I was invited to take it in 17. I didn't get invited in 19. It was only a random sampling of non-represented staff. We do have data breakdowns for each year, for all the years that I was taken, of like what population identified as Hispanic year to year. I don't have them off the top of my head because that's a lot of data, but we do have that, but we still don't know. I mean, it would be great as far as assessment and building action plans if you had this increase year after year, like when you look at this results of I feel my contributions are recognized for the Hispanic group, it goes 53 to 66. That makes me want to get that group of people into a room and say, you know, what do we do to make it go up 13 points? Because I want to make sure, to Eugene's point, that we do that for everyone on campus. But we don't know exactly who was asked.
Yeah, and this is also related to the question of, well, why doesn't the survey also go out to all staff? It only goes out to a certain percentage of staff. So, of course, being the new person here, I asked UCLP, I'm like, it's a survey that's sent out electronically. Why can't we add more email addresses to the list? And the answer was, it's statistically significant the way it is. And I said, okay, but why would we tell some people their opinion doesn't matter? And supposedly they're taking a look at it again, because I'm pushy in that way.
So here's that question again about organizational change. Generally, major organizational changes across the UC system have been explained well. Again, this is the one where we went from 20 to 44%. There's not a lot of break in groups when you sort of break them down by ethnicity in response to that. And we're going to see these questions again through different lenses, so that's why I'm just going to sort of scoot through them. Happy to go back, just call me out. My campus location does an excellent job of keeping employees informed about important organizational matters affecting us. So we went from 61 to 71%. And then to the earlier point, if we knew what the populations were or who exactly took the survey, I would love to know. The black response rate in 17 was 61, and now it's gone up 20% to 81 in 2019. I'd love to know why there was a 20% jump there, because it's most significant of the groupings, right? But we don't know, unfortunately, with any certainty.
Could I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So,
Microphone's
Wait
coming.
for that microphone.
So I haven't looked at the demographics for a little while, but this is looking at these ones that are broken down by ethnicity seems especially problematic when you're thinking about only non-represented staff being included, because as I understand it, non-represented staff are, especially Chicano Latino, much higher percentages. So I don't think you can compare these, because if you're leaving out the represented staff, proportionally you're leaving out more people of color, as I understand it.
You're correct, and it is problematic based on it, but this is the information that we have. The poll survey does go out to represented staff as well. Because we don't collect the information about the type of employee who's responded, we can't tell you that. So again, as we think about, do we ask more questions to figure out more about who's responding, the type of employees responding, or where they might be on campus, weighing that against, are fewer people going to respond because now we're asking more questions? And so it's a conversation that we're thinking about it. So, input, this is the place where people should feel free to weigh in and give their opinions, because at the end of the day, we don't have the scientific answer that's going to inform why we do it. We make an informed decision, but there's no right or wrong necessarily. But I do understand the limitations of the information we do have.
Sorry, James. Just adding on to that, I think it would be great if, as you're giving them feedback, and I would actually give this feedback to HR more broadly, if we could have more other categories, because I don't know about this particular, I actually think this one does this too, but I know all of the HR voluntary forms to force people to pick white if they are Middle Eastern or Native American, or not Native American, sorry, North African, and that's clearly not the lived experience of people who are a different brown. And so having more choice would be helpful, even if you have to aggregate them for federal data into white, et cetera. At least asking it differently so that you could disaggregate it if you needed to would be really helpful, because I think this also erases the diversity and or discourages people, frankly, from answering surveys when they have to be forced into boxes they don't agree with.
So I hear and agree with everything that you're saying. I was surprised, and I asked James, why are these the only categories? And redirected me again to UCLP, and I asked them that, and I can't remember the answer, but I think it was, well, in order to benchmark against what Willis Towers Watson does nationwide, this is why we have that. And I said, well, okay, but I think we have different purposes other than benchmarking nationwide, and here are the categories that I think we should be using, which is consistent for, like the My Voice survey, if you've seen that, is much more reflective of our population because you can choose a lot more things. This, I think, the answer for this is expediency more than anything else, which is not satisfactory.
But your point is not lost on this, and like other slides I could share. That I was just looking at over the lunch hour. I was with the Allianz staff organizations and covering this same sort of presentation, and of course, they had voiced concerns about these categories as well. And when you look at the data of we had 923 people respond to the survey, right? 200 people refused to identify their race, their ethnicity. And I think they opted out because they were not included. And also from the UCOP-wide survey, I have a deck that shows the people who responded UCOP-wide, like when you average out the campuses, because in their categories, they only said gay, straight, and bisexual. They didn't allow for any other sort of identities. They didn't, nothing above male and female. So there was like 700 people who just didn't respond. So they're leaving a lot of data on the table because they're not accommodating groups. And Eugene's directly given this feedback, and we did as well in 2017. So we're hoping for other changes. But your point's taken. On to working relationships, there is a good cooperation between my department and other departments at my campus or location. This we're level set at 60, so we're at 60 before, we're at 60 now. A little dip in the identified Asian group, but otherwise, that's just what it is as far as that response goes. Image brand, this is I want you to look at this question, the next question in particular, in tandem. Not that you would sort of like not look at them at all in tandem, but these two sort of goes back to that point that Tommy Howard was just making. When you ask the question, I am proud to be associated with the UC system, here are the numbers, pretty good numbers, right? Particularly among the black respondents from 2019 to 17, again, up 20 points. So I am proud to be associated with the UC system. Now, move to this question. My campus location is highly regarded by its employees. So it's sort of like, yeah, I am proud to work here, but I'm not so sure you are, right? And so it's like everyone else hates this place. This place is a dumpster fire, but I'm happy. Right? So, but and we're going to see this through all the lenses of gender and role and tenure. But this is, look at that, people. This is like a significant 20% jump, right? Yes, we have a question up there. Oh,
Yeah.
Did you bring your own microphone?
Yes,
That's
I
pretty
did.
clever. Okay, this is awesome. She's like a groupie. This is awesome.
I think one thing to think about is that we do all experience society differently, and I wouldn't expect, no matter how perfect UC Berkeley is, UC Berkeley is within society, so I would just kind of scratch a little bit the assumption that our goal is for everyone to be at 100%, but instead to put more granularity, make sure that the questions distinguish between, like, I am happy at my job versus I am happy that UC Berkeley is doing the best it can to promote equity inclusion or something. So you see there's a distinction in that, for instance, some people may be having stress from the Trump administration. That is an extent factor, and then how is UC Berkeley doing the best within its power? I think those should just be separated out, and you should only judge yourself on what UC Berkeley is capable of. That's just realistic.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, I don't think the goal is for us to be at 100% for everything, but I think your gender or whatever demographic it is that you belong to shouldn't determine how you experience the campus. I shouldn't be able to look and say you're a Latina and be able to guess where you fall here. That's why I say everybody should experience Berkeley equally well, regardless of their demographic. And this is a symptom of when you look at the education system, you can look at somebody's zip code and predict their outcome in life, right? So I shouldn't be able to do some sort of demographic profile of an employee here and predict their outcome at Berkeley.
This is a confusing retention question. At the present time, are you seriously considering leaving the UC system? So we went from 52 to 57, so this is 57% no are not currently considering leaving.
So by show of hands, how many people are considering leaving? I saw a hand go up.
So that means, to this point, that 43% of people are considering leaving, right? So this is, which seems like which is a high number, but I would set the context that in the world at this moment, according to the Willis Towers Watson data, 33% of people are looking for a new job. So just in the world, across industries, private sector, nations, there's a third of people who are considering seriously leaving their jobs. So that doesn't mean we don't have more work to do, but within context, these numbers are not as shocking as they would appear. Wellness, my organization promotes an environment of physical, mental, and social well-being. You can see we went from 58 to 62%, up significantly in the Asian group and also the Hispanic group from the past survey. I feel that management at my campus location supports equal opportunity for all employees of all differences, including and not limited to age, gender, identity, ethnicity, and disability status. This, you can see we are a level set from where we were 2 years ago at 69. We're a little up in the self-responded Asian category, but we're down with the black group, and we're also down a point with the white group. So not down a lot, but still significantly lower.
And for me, this is an area where a lot of it, so again, I've only been here 5 months, but in looking externally, the campus has placed a lot of attention on this, at least in writing, with the strategic plan and things that I could read. But this tells me people aren't feeling that when they come to work.
So now we're going to look at the same questions that I just walked through, but we're going to look at it by definition of role. So people self-selected what role they have, and the groupings here from the top to bottom are director or above, manager, supervisor, and individual contributor. So we're going to look through these questions with those different lenses. We asked people to identify what they were. Will tell us Watson, rather, when you got the survey, you chose. There wasn't anything that was authenticated. So we know that there's some confusion sometimes among different groups or different employees of like, who's a supervisor, who's a manager, who's a director, and I think we caused some of that confusion ourselves, but this is just how people reported their own role, okay? So here is this question, I'm confident I can achieve my personal career objectives within the UC system. Again, we're up 52 to 58, you already know that number, but it's super high among the director level. And as I was sharing with Alianza over lunch, as you get higher in level and salary and tenure as far as years on campus and whiter and straighter, your engagement scores are higher. So I don't think that's shocking, but it's borne out in this data that you see. Particularly when we're looking through the lens of role, you're going to notice through all these questions, if you watch this area here, the individual contributor, that's always lower than the rest.
And that's not unique to Berkeley.
It's not unique to Berkeley. Here's this performance management question. I feel personal contributions are recognized. Again, up overall. The lowest group, again, is the individual contributor, although it's even there's an increase there, still lower than the rest. Now that you're sort of more familiar with these questions, I'm going to start racing through. This is the organizational change, that group where we went to 20 to 44. There's not a lot of daylight here between the different groups. A little bit higher at the director level, and the rest of the groups seem a little even. Here's a question about excellent job of keeping employees informed about organizational matters affecting us. Again, we had a 10-point jump overall, and you can see the numbers here. What jumps out at me, and may jump out at you as well, is like the director level is a 20% jump and an increase in that category. There is good cooperation between my department and other departments at my campus location. Here you can see that, again, the average is 60, so we're where we were before. It's higher as you go up a little bit. There's a little dip here, but it's only 1 point among the managers group, and again, lowest with the individual contributor. I am proud to be associated with the UC system. Here again, this is highest in the supervisor group and the managers. And look at the directors, 93. Here's another question. My campus location is highly regarded by its employees. Again, it's went up 10%, about 54 to 65, but higher still for the directors. Supervisors and managers are still higher. At this time, are you seriously considering leaving the UC? Again, we were at 57, right? The higher up you go, the higher this number is. So 65% are not considering leaving. Here's my organization promotes environmental, physical, mental, and social well-being. Again, we're up, but again, as you get up in the manager, supervisor, director levels, those responses are higher. Here's a diversity inclusion question around my campus supports equal opportunity for all employees. Again, the individual contributor is lowest. The campus average is 69, but we get higher as you get up here in managers, supervisors, and directors. Career development. Now we're looking at this through tenure. I know this might be kind of tiny. I'm not sure how much you can read, but this is 30. And then down here is 1 to 3 years. So as you go up with years of experience and tenure in the role. So here's that question again. I am confident about my career objectives within the UC system. We're up again from 52 to 58, but we're way up here for 25 and above.
They've already achieved their career goals.
Why people are laughing, I don't know. Maybe you're 25 years of service, so maybe that's you. You can see also here, I feel my personal contributions are recognized, again, 68, and it goes up as you go towards years of service. You see that here as well. It's even a little more graphic here. Even though we've improved in all areas from 17 to 19 in some ways dramatically, we're explaining organizational change much better. There seems to be, as you look at these slides through tenure, there seems to be something about the newer employees, and newer doesn't necessarily mean younger. It just means people have been here from 1 to 5 years, right? These numbers. And then the higher numbers of staff who have been here for 20 to 25, 30 years. There seems to be, in this area, like the trough of despair or something. And we don't really exactly have an answer for what that is because you can't get all these people in the room, but there's a falling off in that group across all these slides, right? Not so much on this communication question, where an excellent job of keeping employees informed about important organizational matters affecting us. Those are pretty even throughout, although, again, it's better. But here again, you have working relationships. There's cooperation with my campus location. It seems to get better as tenure goes up. This image brand question is higher across the board, but again, very high on the low end, especially look at these 90s for staff who have been here 1 to 3 years and staff who have been here 5 to 10. And then you get up there again in more senior level staff. Actually, I beg your pardon, not senior level staff who have been here 30 years. We have no indication of staff could have been here for 30 years in similar roles or different roles, but that we shouldn't assume that someone who's been here for 25 years is in those roles of directors and things like that. My campus location is highly regarded by employees. When we look at this for tenure, we made a significant improvement from 17 overall. And then we're super high here as far as more senior staff members. This retention about people who are thinking of leaving. Again, the numbers are higher of people who are not thinking of leaving, no, as we get up 2 years of service. And this wellness question about my organization promotes an environment of physical, mental, and social well-being. Again, we went up a little bit here from 58 to 62, and down a little bit for like the 1 to 3 year group, and down a little bit from the 5 to 10 group, and the 15 to 20 group. Not a lot, but enough that, again, to an earlier commenter's question, like we don't know who the people were asking, and we don't know if they're the same people. And because the numbers aren't that large, it's less. It's not as dispiriting as one might think, but we want to definitely sort of watch that and track it over time. Here's the question that my location supports equal opportunity for all employees. Again, the numbers are higher at the earliest and the more senior levels in this question, significantly higher than the campus average of 69. You can see the 1 to 3 years is 77. This is the question of these questions through gender. And these are some of the most boring slides I've ever seen as a data analyst. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them because there's very little daylight between these responses for male and female. So here's that question of my career objectives. Male 60, female 57. Here's that question about contributions being recognized, 71 to 67. Little differences, but nothing that big as far as organizational change. Increases across the board, but nothing that really jumps out. Here's one that's 72 to 71. So we're not seeing really any sort of break apart. Here is a little dip in working relationships. But again, 3 points, so no heartache there. Still very close to the response, the female response, and a a little bit just below the average. And when we ask across gender about, I am proud to be associated with the system, the UC system, we were 84, 87. And then is my campus location is highly regarded by its employees. Again, 67, 64, so not a lot of difference there as well. And the retention is almost level set between male and female respondents. As is the wellness question about your environment supports physical, mental, and social well-being. This question is a little higher for diversity inclusion that supports equal opportunity for employers of all differences, but not limited to age, gender identity, ethnicity, and disability status. There's a difference there from 74 to 66. So those are all the questions we were asking, all the run-throughs we have. Now, we get to hear Eugene speak more. Any questions about what we covered so far? We're doing well on time.
Questions, comments? Should we keep going?
Yes.
Okay.
So are you guys going to improve upon this for the coming years based upon your interaction with UCOP in terms of changes you want to make to this? Because I'm not seeing how it can be really effective for us if we didn't capture everything we need to capture in this survey.
So I don't know yet because I haven't gotten a definitive response, but we have another HR Leadership Council meeting, which is all of the Chief Human Resources Officers from around the system coming up in, I believe, February, where this is going to be something that's on the agenda about, as part of also the larger question of how is UCOP HR serving the campuses? Because my impression is that they have a lot of initiatives that they initiate, and they say, hey, we think this would be good for you, rather than the other way around, where we're the customer saying, this is what I want as a customer, please do this. So especially around this, I'm going to push pretty hard on this. 923 respondents, statistically significant, that's just not satisfying to me. I don't care what the statistics tells us, right? I want to ask more people the questions, and I want the categories to be more relevant to what it is that we're doing here. But at the same time, we also have our pulse survey, and we can use that to get the information that we find valuable.
I've been here 6 years, and I think I've taken the survey class.
Right, and that's a problem because it makes you think it doesn't matter, and you're probably less inclined if you get asked again, why am I getting, So we're trying to address it, and I will keep everybody informed.
So if I can just jump in real quick to help answer a little bit. In September, when the results got rolled out to the Council of UC Staff Assemblies, a number of us did bring up some of the inherent problems with the current setup. And with a number of new CHROs from several campuses, there is hopefully a little bit more push, and arguably because CUCSA is who hires Willis Towers Watson, we could potentially hire somebody else if there's enough push. And I think that there have been enough things that are identified as goofy. So hopefully, one of the downsides though is that we're only on that board for 2 years, and the thing is done every 2 years, so you don't always have a new crop of people. So it will be a good push from the CHROs to keep it going, but hopefully we can get that changed.
Yeah, and in conversations I've had with all of the other CHROs, nobody thinks that this is working great the way we have it. Everybody, in contrast, says, well, we've been told we can't change it. So, but that's not true. All right, so these are the things that I would like to talk about that sort of stood out to me. So this is the overall look at the survey. So when James was talking at the beginning that, Berkeley has improved, that's where you see the green. Overall is our comparison to UC, that's where you see a lot of the red, and then nationwide all the way to the right. And so you can look at this and you can take the positive view and say, hey, we're doing a lot of great improvement. Or you can take the negative view and say we're a below average place to work. Just depends on the mood that you're in. I prefer to look at this and say the trend is going in the right direction. We are on the way to becoming a great place to work based on this, right? There's other measures that make this a great place to work. This isn't the be all or end of all, or doesn't define what kind of a place this is to work. This is just one look at it. So my highlights. So these are the things that stood out to me. EW, Eugene Whitlock. Somebody thought that was Entertainment Weekly. No, it's me.
Well, you have been entertaining weekly since you've been here. Sure.
Thank you, Jay. You get that raise now. So that's how easy it is, see? So 96% believe strongly in essentially the mission of this. That's an incredible number. I mean, as an organization, to have that many people who believe in what it is that you're doing, that's a hurdle that most organizations never can jump over. So that means if we treat people right, we can do anything that we want to do, right? Anything that we want to do, because people come here already wanting to help. 87% have a work schedule that allows sufficient flexibility to meet their personal family needs. That's fantastic too. Now, what's missing is, do we allow people to do remote work and so on? There's room for improvement there, I've heard anecdotally, but by and large, people can still live their lives while they work here, by and large. Everybody in this room agree? Oh, wow. There's work to do. Yeah. And I tend to use a lot of humor when I talk. Please don't understand that to mean I don't take these things seriously. I do take these things very seriously. The message that went out on Friday about taking care of yourselves and wellness, so I wrote that myself because it means that much to me. This isn't something I said, somebody write something for me and I'll send it out. No, taking care of yourself, taking care of employees, making sure you have time to be with your families, your pets, or just to live your life is extremely important. And this is a conversation I regularly have with Mark Fisher, my supervisor, and he takes it very seriously. I've talked to the chancellor about it, EVCP, and so everybody's on board. And so everybody agrees we need to do this. And so what I've said is, okay, how are we going to do this? Leadership has to start making accommodations and the demands they place on people so that people can continue to live their lives. And so some of the things that you saw in the email were things that I specifically discussed with them. And I said, this is what, these are the sorts of things that we need to be doing differently. And my hope is that that email is the start of ongoing conversations. But I want to give people a little bit of something where they can say, hey, to their supervisor, no, I can't get this done. Didn't you see that email from Eugene? Or whatever it is. Because it's going to take a long time to change the culture, in part because a lot of you who've talked to me have heard me say, we hire a bunch of highly motivated type A folks. And it doesn't take a lot to get us worked up so that we're working late at night or working through the weekend to get that project done. And that's where senior leadership and senior managers have to think about, okay, I know my population who's working here. Maybe I need to tell them, you have a week to do it. It's 2 weeks, and need to rethink, does everything need to rush and get done right away? Berkeley's been here 150 years. It's not going to go away because we take a little bit longer to do stuff. I don't know if everybody believes that, and that's where we need to work on changing the culture and the mindset around that. But we have 15% turnover now. If we don't treat people humanely, we're going to burn them out, and the 96% of the people who believe strongly in the mission will still believe, they'll just be working somewhere else. Right? I mean, I don't think I'm saying anything. If I'm saying something crazy, please raise your hand. 77% say they can be themselves at work without worrying about how they will be accepted. That's a fantastic number. Flip side, 23%, about 1 in 4, do not feel that they can be themselves at work. That's where we have the work to do. 1 in 4 people, so probably a quarter of this room, people do not feel that they can be themselves at work. And that's a hard thing to accept, that knowing that somebody's coming to work and they don't feel comfortable here and they're here 8 hours or longer a day and they don't even feel like they can be themselves. That's a lot to ask for somebody. It's mentally taxing to have to live like that and to have to work like that. So that's something we definitely want to change. 29% would not recommend the UC system as a good place to work. That's not about Berkeley, that's about the UC system. But it's a high number. 31% do not believe that management supports equal opportunity. So that's a huge number that people think we just pay lip service to this stuff. And quite frankly, I can't blame people who believe that, because I said there's a lot of stuff that's in writing, but in terms of, okay, from the high-minded ideals and principles that we have, where's the translation into action? And I see a hand shooting up. Stop me before I say something crazy.
The word management, because it came up a few times in some of the questions, I wonder how that's interpreted by people, because obviously you have managers who are taking the survey also, and their supervisors are often faculty. Or some people may be interpreting that as management meaning senior campus leaders. And so just put that out there, that there may be some ambiguity that could be clarified in the future too when the survey's done again.
Yeah, that's a helpful comment. Does anybody have a sense? I would read that and think senior management, because they're the ones who really have the power to make things happen, but that's just how I would read it.
You could look at the data based on role and know whose people are reporting to.
Yeah.
You look at that question at the role.
Is there another question?
since academic institutions have unique power structures that are different than corporate contexts, that may be a situation where Willis Towers Watson's structure may not quite fit.
Right.
Because of the zigzaggy power structure that can often exist in academia.
Yeah, I'm going to ask more about that. Thank you. Okay, so 43% are considering leaving the UC system. We talked about this already. It's a big number. I would like for it to be lower, because when you have a population, 96% of whom believe in what we're doing, even though the nationwide average might be a third, I think we should be shooting for a much lower number. A hand here. Yep. One second. Microphone's coming.
But that could also possibly include those who are close to retirement.
Yes.
So how do you weed those people out?
Yeah, we don't know.
We don't have a way of weeding them out, and especially when you looked at the tenure slide of, and you saw this question through the tenure slide. It's fewer people are considering leaving the longer they're here because they're incentivized by a program that keeps them here longer because of the pension system and vacation pay and sick hours, and so there's a natural trend there, but we just don't know who answered the questions. So.
Okay, so what are we doing to address some of the concerns that were highlighted by this data, but also by our poll surveys and in conversations that we have with different groups? So I don't want anybody to come away thinking this determines what we do. This is not the only thing that we look at. So, I've talked about this at the town hall before, in the campus conversation that I did, but we're going to continue to provide a lot of emphasis on staff development. And one of the things that we're in the process of doing is revising the policy that relates to professional development, campus-sponsored activities. So at the end of this month, Angela has been working on this since before I started, to really define what campus-sponsored activities and to make it clear that employees should be and can participate in campus-sponsored activities. The other thing that the policy is going to do is define how much time they're allowed to dedicate that, set a floor. And the floor will be for exempt employees, 80 hours a year, and for non-exempt employees, 10 days a year. So campus-sponsored activities, professional development, conferences, training, staff organizations. And so the email that came out from the chancellor and me in December sort of foreshadows what's going to come in this written policy. And the idea is that we expect and want people to participate in these things because this work truly benefits the university. It drives employee engagement and it makes people feel like they have a place to belong here when they're allowed to participate in these sorts of different organizations. And ultimately, when you drive your employee engagement numbers up, retention goes down, productivity also goes up, and people are happier, right? We want people to be happier. And so, I hear anecdotally that managers don't let people do professional development. I have yet to meet a manager who says, I'll never let my people do professional development. All right, but there's some truth somewhere in between about that, but this is also just going to make it clearer what the expectation is going to be, to set the expectation for managers and for employees about what it looks like to do professional development. The policy, we expect that it will be effective March 1st, and you'll see it before it's effective. And it's going to be an interim policy because we want to understand the impact of what that's going to be. One of the questions that came up when we were at one of the subcommittee meetings was, okay, so how do we handle an employee who's having attendance issues and all of a sudden they want to go for the next 3 days to a conference, or they're joining a new community of practice and they're sort of escaping their obligations that they have at their desk. And these are things that we'll need to think through a little bit by trial and error, but we know there are going to be some growing pains as we change. And so that people have some perspective, the model of setting the floor at 80 hours a week for exempt and 10 for non-exempt and 10 for exempt was what we used to do here in 1992. So this is actually a copy of a policy that Chancellor Tien put into place in 1992. At some point in time, we went away from it. The folks I talked to didn't remember or know why, but we're going back to the old days. Oh.
Isn't that the policy right now? I'm a little bit confused. What's different?
So the policy right now is they're guidelines. It's not from OP, it's guidelines. It's not actually policy. And so we're writing the implementing procedures, which will be local policy if you're here, which set the floor. So the OP says I think they recommend 80 hours, for example. We're saying that's the floor. So if I recommend 80 hours, that means, yeah, you can do this, you could do that. That's just a suggestion. We're not making a suggestion. There's a question in the back. Yeah, they still can't hear you in the internet.
You're not that loud.
I'm just not sure how my unit can operationalize 80 hours and deliver the services that my unit is required to deliver at University Health Services. I mean, I would love to be able to do that, but we have a huge number of students who need care, and my unit can barely keep up right now. I mean, I'm just curious to know how resources will be allocated in order to achieve these goals.
That's a very good question, and this is the question I asked to those who control the resources, who it's not me, right? And so part of this, so especially when we are dealing with people in units that are student-facing, you can't just tell the student no. Maybe you can tell them come back later or wait in a longer line. That's more of a conversation that we can have to strategize together. For the units where it's not student-facing, it's again that person, the person who's asking for the service, understanding that, hey, I'm sorry, you're going to have to wait an extra day or two. I know you're used to getting it in 24 hours, now it's going to take 72. It's managing expectations for service delivery.
So I'm just going to play devil's advocate.
Please do.
I don't think anybody in my unit is going to turn somebody away who has pneumonia or, who is having a mental health crisis. So, I mean, I would just invite, as you pursue this, that, student-facing units like mine have no way, with the way that we are currently staffed, to meet this floor.
And so I would say, I don't know exactly where you fit in the system, but this is a serious issue that needs to be raised for all of those who are similarly situated, so that people can understand. Because I didn't decide by myself, right, that this is the direction that we're going to go in. And so for those people who are saying, yes, Eugene, this is great, right? Okay, so how are we going to support those units who want to do it, that if they pull that person off the line, some student with a mental health crisis won't get served? What do we get? Because I don't want it to make it we either help the students and not support the staff who should be doing this professional development, want to do this. I don't want to make it an either or. So at some point in time, a decision needs to be made as how do we then allow the staff to do this thing that we think is very important to them in their individual development, right? And manage the students. I don't have an answer that I can give you just here off the top of my head, but it's definitely a relevant consideration. More on this? Okay. Next bullet, so achieve together. Everybody's heard about that by now, but I think this is really something about improving upon the already strong relationships that we have between managers and employees by having the regular conversations and really developing a coaching culture where managers aren't just seen as the person who's going to give you your assignment, but they're the person who's going to help develop you, train you, and help you move along, perhaps to your next job here at the university or somewhere else. And I think by having regular conversations with the structure that's around those conversations, we'll start to move the organization in that direction. Oh, I see a hint.
So I remember the email you sent about staff being able to take time to do professional development. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it also gave permission to different managers and supervisors, and also just empower staff to then ask for that level of support. The thing that I'm always curious about is that this was wonderful information today, but it comes up only at a certain time, and you have to be aware of it and be able to go dig it up from somewhere to get that information. It would be nice if there was a way to reference this information a lot of times, so when we're making decisions, we're getting this information out. And when decisions have been made at the campus, that we say back to the staff, based on what you said to us, this is what we're doing and why we're doing it. There are times where, a lot of times when we have different providers for different services we subscribe to or whatever, there's a constant feedback loop where we're being asked information and then they're making decisions based on that. So you feel like the information you gave them is going to be used. My concern here is that I don't get the feedback as to whether or not, when I answer these questions, that they're being used in some way that I can experience those things. I don't. You
So-
see what I'm trying to get at?
So I understand what you're saying. So part of it is a session like this, so we can say, here's what we heard and here's what we're doing. I said this also at the town hall. James is going to go to any department to where he's invited, but I also welcome suggestions for what are we missing? How else should we be communicating these things, or other forums, other sorts of meetings, so that people understand that their opinion does matter, that we sit there and we go over this, and we say, what do we need to be doing to address these things? And when we develop in People and Culture our strategic plan, we're sitting there looking at this in the pulse survey data to say, okay, where do we need to be focusing our attention? And we're asking ourselves, did we focus it in the right places before? And I want people to know and understand that. And so again, we're open to suggestions if there's other things that we should be doing. This managers forum was sort of my idea, so that managers would understand that, one, managers' opinions count, and we don't only just talk about all the things that managers need to do. We want managers to tell us also what we need to be doing, but also so that this information is just more accessible. Does that address your comment? Last one here. So we're hiring a director of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So, as I highlighted there, does our campus really support EEO, or does management address EEO? And then when you see the disparities, there's not an equity of experience on this campus. So this position will be created within human resources, people and culture, whereas before it used to be an equity inclusion. It's not going to be just lift the position and put it in people and culture. The position is going to be very different. It's going to be a director level position equivalent to the other directors in the unit. And not only is it focused on, the sort of typical diversity, equity, inclusion, but we put the belonging piece in there, because I really view this position as being responsible for creating belonging for everybody on campus and community building. And so this person will not only be responsible for the programs that we typically think of when we think of diversity, for example, the LCEP for the staff, the Leadership Development Program for Staff of Color, which, by the way, we will be calling for nominations next week, so you'll see an email. So start thinking about if there are people in your departments who should be getting nominated or pushed forward to participate in it. That email will come out. If you have more questions about that program, Inette Dishler is the point person for it, so she's the first stop. And most of you, if not all of you, probably know Inette. If you're afraid to ask her, you can ask me about it. She's prepared wonderful talking points for me. And I'm actually involved. I say that facetiously, but I'm also involved in the development of the program, so I understand it. But this person will not only have those sorts of things in their portfolio, but also the communities of practice, employee engagement, because the idea for me is that role is not only the diversity person, but they're involved in all aspects of campus that revolves around community and engagement, so that they can bring that lens to that experience and show up in places where you wouldn't normally expect or normally invite that person who does just only diversity work. And that person will already have 3 or 4 staff who report to them, so it's not going to be Sid's situation where she was sort of just given all of this responsibility and not a whole lot of support. This person will already have a team of people there available so that they can really do the work that needs to be done on the campus. And also, because they will have people there supporting them, if departments say, hey, we want to do some work on inclusion or some work on engagement, there will be people available to come into your department and work closely with you. Campus-wide training for diversity, inclusion, and implicit bias. So this will really fall under the responsibility of that new director who it is that we hire. And this is something that I've talked about a lot, and people talked about apparently a lot before I got here, and it hasn't happened yet. But also with our talent acquisition group, we're working on hiring procedures. So we don't have really hiring procedures. We tell you kind of what the rules are, but there isn't a best practices guide or something else that you can rely on. And we don't say, if you want to serve on a hiring committee, here's what you need to know to be an effective hiring committee member, and that absolutely has to change. For those of you who know, I came from the community college system here in California, and it was the law that in order to serve on a hiring committee, you had to be trained in the benefits of diversity and unconscious bias. If you didn't do the training, you could not serve on a screening committee. End of story. Here, it's just up to the hiring manager. That's not really an effective way to do things. This is the University of California. We should be setting the bar very high and leading by example. We don't do that now. That's going to change. And so this is something that's very important to me and something I've worked on a lot over the last 5 years in my separate pre-Berkeley career. Any questions? Things that we should be focusing on that we're not? Nazim?
what about, are there any thoughts about the ER and LR work on campus and those positions and the director position and kind of the direction that this campus has gone in the past and where we can go in the future?
Anybody here have any concerns about ER, LR? Few people. So yes. So we had, this past week, we finished the interviews for the director position. And so we'll be able to make a decision this week. We'll do who we want to hire, do some reference checking. Hopefully that person will be on board in February. In December, we made 4 permanent hires. 2 of the people were already on limited contracts, so we're adding 2 new people. There's 2 positions left to fill at the individual contributor level, and those will probably be filled later in the spring. My preference is to have the director be able to make a couple of hires when he or she starts. But in general, how that organization is going to function. So we're going to, one thing, what are we going to call it? It's not going to be employee relations here, labor relations here, and so you have to know what kind of question you have to know who to call to get your answer. It's going to be employee and labor relations, and all of the people will do all of the work. And we're going to align to the regions so that instead of figuring out what bargaining unit your employee's in, and then that tells you who you should call on the team, you're in Champs region, there's going to be a team of people within employee and labor relations assigned to Champs. So you send your email or your question in through our fancy email system that we have. We actually do have a fancy one for employee and labor relations, and the team will respond to the question. And we think it's better, and we've worked with an outside consultant for the past couple of months, and a lot of you here who I see have participated in conversations with her. That's also informing the direction that it is that we're going to go in, because we want to be able to align how we provide services to sort of how the institution is structured, because we think that would be more efficient. And also, I think because there's been so much turnover in that unit, there are 3 or 4 legacy employees out of a dozen or more who are still here. I think what the feedback that I've heard loud and clear is that there needs to be a change in attitude about how we deliver the services. Are we here to partner and help the business units attain their business goals, or are we here to tell you, no, you can't do it, right? I think the truth lies somewhere in between, because we don't always just say no and we're not a bunch of mean people. But I think the orientation and the mindset that people want to feel more, and so perception is somewhat reality, is that we're here to partner with you and help you figure out how to do it. And as we've screened the candidates, that's one of the key criteria, is that customer service orientation, that yes, we have to steward the university's resources and we have to be gatekeepers around certain things, but also it's about figuring out how to help you solve your problems so you can do your job. Right? We don't want you to be spending all your time doing personnel issues, even though it may be in your job description, because that shouldn't be the focus of your attention. And the other thing that we want to do is try to support and empower the HR partners in the regions and the HR managers in the regions to make more decisions locally, if for no other reason than to make them more quickly by people who are more informed about what it is that's going on and who know the cast of characters who are involved. And so now my understanding is that some things take longer to do. We're short-staffed, so it takes longer because of that, or we just don't have the capacity to review everything that we say we want to review while you're waiting and an employee's waiting, getting increasingly mad, or some situation needs to be resolved and we're not resolving it. And so by allowing the regions to make more decisions independently of employee and labor relations in the center, that should help things move more quickly and just create a better experience for everybody. Does that address it pretty well?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm also wondering, much to the last thought that you had, if there's any talk of perhaps partnering with some of the managers and some of the directors that are in the units that are perhaps more well-versed in the ER and LR work to perhaps expedite some of that stuff. I mean, I think it's a great idea to focus on perhaps not such tenured staff if we're doing new hires to really work on the development track, but if there are people that are in the units that are more seasoned, if there is some sort of partnership to allow for a little more independent thought and a little more independent action with the checks and balances in place to make sure that we're all aligned as a campus. It's just a thought that perhaps might be coming into your inbox at some point to that idea of, like, is there a possibility along with the HR managers and the business partners to also partner with some of the managers in the units to see if there's something that we can do to expedite some of these decisions and these processes?
Yeah, the idea is to decide as much as you possibly can locally, without getting into all of the details. For me, If it's not something that's going to take a property right away, if you're not suspending somebody without pay, if you're not terminating somebody, I'm generally comfortable with those decisions being made locally, in part because the consequences of quote unquote screwing something like that up, it's somebody's not sitting at home, not getting paid, not being able to take care of their family, right? That's what I'm worried about. But do I think we have smart people who know what they're doing? Yes. Are we letting them do everything that they possibly could? Probably not. So that's when I talk about how we provide our services, that I think that needs to be addressed. Let me see if I have more here. We have 9 minutes, so I'm going to fly through this. So, some key resources: Berkeley People Management. Kathy's in the back. She raised her hand earlier, and as I understood from when we talked about it before, each of you here committed to participate and complete Berkeley People Management programming.
Yes.
Cal Coaching Network, Inette, that's another one of her responsibilities, and that's a brand new thing, and it's a good organization. Again, it's about developing a coaching culture here at UC Berkeley. And then we have Manager Mastermind Group, and Shirley Geraldo does that, and that's really a support group for managers to get together to talk about issues that they're having, how they address them, and just to share best practices among themselves without somebody like me looking over your shoulder, I suppose. Kathy has her hand up. Yes.
So Eugene, I just wanted to say, in Berkeley People Management, in support of the efforts around implicit bias, for right now, there is some just-in-time learning that's in the Grow Today series, which is all online. There's 6 online modules that you can take, and if you take all 6 of the online modules, you'll actually receive the UC system-wide implicit bias certificate. So that's something that you can do, and also, just to support your efforts in the meantime. There is actually one of the modules in particular that addresses UC hiring for success, and that's specifically around implicit bias in the hiring process.
Right, and when I did the hiring for the director, I required everybody who wanted to be on the committee to complete that training, and everybody did. It takes 25 to 30 minutes. For those of you here who do hiring and are chairing committees, make that a requirement. We looked at the data, and there are 254 people on our campus who've done this training. 254. That's awful and embarrassing. Awful and embarrassing.
So anecdotally, I was on a hiring committee recently, and I was asked to take that as part of it. And all the people that were on the hiring committee with me could not stop talking about how much awareness they gained from having taken that training and how much it impacted them personally as they were going through and considering the candidates that were being brought forward. So just from my own personal experience, I can say it wasn't a painful training, first of all, to take, and also it seemed to have incredible impact on those of us who did take it and the way we approached the actual hire of somebody that we brought to Cal.
And I would say do it now, because by the end of this calendar year, it's going to be a requirement anyway. Then I also wanted to talk about, so in Angela's group, the people and organization development, I wanted to highlight all of the services that are available to your departments. As I said before, we ask you to do a lot, make your employees happy, do this, do that, and do the other thing. We also have services to support you in doing that. And so this is just a screenshot from the website of the services that are offered. Team development, we do retreats, disc training, leadership 360s, and so on there. So if you're thinking, what can I do to, improve my department? And you're looking for ideas, you don't have to go and hire some outside consultant to help you figure this out. We've got a very talented team here who knows Berkeley, probably knows your department, and is eager to help. So I encourage you to reach out and tap us to help you, because that's what we're here to do. And so that's all I have. So in the next 5 minutes that we maybe have left, if there's any other questions or comments. Well, so you can think about the question. So after today, you're going to get an email that will have a link to the presentation. It's also going to have a survey to ask if you thought this format was good for a meeting, to have this, hopefully in the future it'll be a little bit more Q&A depending on the topics. I met with AMP last week, and we talked about collaborating to bring topics here to a manager's forum, so that because AMP has its pulse on what managers are talking about or worried about, or other people can do it. Because I think I wanted to do this, and I want to create more opportunities to have an interactive discussion, because I know I don't have all the answers. We as a team know we don't have all the answers. And it just seemed to me that there isn't a lot of opportunity for managers writ large to get together and talk and hear each other and the questions. And so please respond to the survey if you think this is useful. Then we'll do it again. If you think this is a waste of your time, we won't do it again. Questions, comments, concerns? You want that 5 minutes to get to the next meeting on time. Well, thank you very much for braving the rain. I appreciate your time.